You know, there were times when I thought, boy, you know, I know everything. But then, you know, I got kicked down in so many different ways. And, you know, I give God thanks for
Now they
that.
say a humble
You know.
child takes the grace of God. Were you cocky? Were you sure of yourself? Were you humble? What type of personality
No,
was the
because,
Burnside at that time?
well, no, because
I had to pull the show that I had for you tonight after receiving such devastating news. My good friend, a father, a mentor had passed. My good friend, Jackson Burnside. Well, for you tonight, I have reason to wear my shades. I refuse to remove them because I am crying. A giant, a great man, a great Bahamian has passed on and gone. But my brother Percy, who had mentored under him in the architect world, says, Utah, you have no reason to be sad. Jackson has passed on to you a vast amount of knowledge within the 3-hour interview you had with him before he died. Well, tonight, Bahamas, I, Utah Taylor-Rolle, will share this interview with you of a legend, a great man, a man who has contributed so much to our Bahamas. Stay tuned. Were you humble? What type of personality was the Burnside at that time?
Well, no, because it was an awesome experience, you know, and every day I was learning something new from fellas, and it just mind-blowing. See, that was the rate of exposure that I was getting at the time made me understand there was so much to learn. And every time I learned something, I said, well, look, so much more to learn. And, you know, for instance, say at the time I was there, they were working with Philip Johnson on the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, and that was then they moved and they set up an office in Hong Kong, and you know this was something that was totally out of my realm, you know, tall buildings and so on, and I was just fascinated by all the science and the technology and the art that these guys brought to their work. But I wanted to come back to the Bahamas. Before I came back to Bahamas, I wanted to work in Africa. I really thought at the time, and I was young, I was naive, I thought I could go to West Africa and I could make a major contribution. And I thought I knew enough. It's only now that I'm 60 years old, 40 years later, that I realize there's a whole lot more to learn, and that I really don't know, and that, you know, it's not knowing that is your greatest asset. It's knowing that you don't know that is your greatest asset, because then you begin to search, you become inquisitive, you really start learning because you open yourself up to new knowledge. But when I went to West Africa, I figured, well, I knew enough to be able to work as an architect. But I wasn't even an intern of any significance then. I had just registered in the UK. So I figured, well, I'm registered now, you know, I got degrees, and I could go to West Africa and I could do well. And perhaps if I stayed, I could have, but it didn't work out. I was overwhelmed. So I quit the job that I was on in West Africa after a very, very short time. I was there a couple of days before I packed up, and a friend who was the national coach in basketball for Nigeria. Olajuwon was one of his boys, little boy in those days. I probably was taller than him. He was going across country, leaving Lagos. He was going to Benin, going to Oshobo, and he invited me to go with him. First we went to Ibadan, and he introduced me to some friends, some chieftains, and then the cultural thing was just mind-blowing, you know, just absolutely mind-blowing. And I was just so turned on by it. It was so rich, and I started to open my eyes to what Africa and how rich in intelligence and knowledge and you know, Africa was. And, you know, we get this notion that we're swinging by your tail through the trees, you know. And I started to get this pride in self. And the more I moved around, the more I realized so much of what I was seeing was Baintown and Grantstown. Cat Island, Artist Town, and so on, you know. And I was seeing myself, I was seeing my roots, and it made me really anxious to come back to the Bahamas. In addition to that, my wife, who was from Chippenham, was Bahamian, she was getting ready to come back to the Bahamas. I couldn't let her come back around all these sharks, you know, without me. So,
Jackson, your story is so intriguing. You all be in awe, but we gotta take a quick break. I know y'all, don't get mad with me, right? We gotta throw some commercials on. We can take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jelani Cartwright from Stories, People, Places, Things.
I'm Louis Georges from Un Parler Creole.
Why take a life? Can you give life?
Pour qui ça va prendre la vie? Est-ce que vous pouvez la vie?
Stop. Think. Conflict resolution. You can resolve it.
Rete, pensez, ou ka résoudre le problème là.
Don't be another statistic, dead or incarcerated.
Pas mette tête dans numéro yo. Mourir or no prison. One of the most awesomest stories I have ever heard. I know you right there, eyes glued to the TV, so I ain't gonna talk too much. Jackson, you back on.
yeah, thanks, Utah. Thanks. I mean, you're bringing out the story. You know, when people are interested in your story, then you recall a whole lot of things, right? Anyhow, so I went to West Africa. I went around from Ibadan to Benin, to Enugu, to Oshobo. Then I went up the River Niger along the coast up to Jos and Kaduna and Maiduguri and Kano. And
I feel so jealous right now just listening to you calling off names I have never even heard. And I went to a couple of places and I thought I had traveled. Wow.
yeah, well, I mean, so I was there, and I'm catching rides with guys in different ways, you know. So you're paying a little something, and a few naira here and there to catch a ride, and the cars are parked up, or you're on the back of a truck or whatever it was. I only had a backpack on my back and my cameras. I had my camera equipment with me, and I'm traveling. Back in the days, I was just making slides because you know, you didn't have all the digital technology you got today. So I was making, you know, and I had all this. That was my heaviest load. You know, I had a couple of pairs of drawers and, you know, and some jeans pants, and that was it, you know.
Exactly.
And, you know, when you stop every few days or so, and you rent a place that got a place where you wash up, and you wash your clothes too, you know, and thank God you're in the warm place, you sleep. You know, you sleep in your naturals, and you get up and your clothes dry, and you know, you put them on and you go on again. And so I moved all around the country, and I've never met a Nigerian who's seen as much of Nigerian as I have seen. I'm sure there are any number of people who have, you know, but most Nigerians I've met are on this side of the world. And when I start telling them the places I've been, and then, you know, so they test me, and then I can tell them about those places, then they realize, oh. So I got to Kano, and I wanted to get a job. The firm I'd worked for in London had an office there, but they didn't really have that much work, and they thought with a name like Jackson Burnside, I was an Englishman. So after they received my letter, they wanted to meet me.
I had to pull the show that I had for you tonight after receiving such devastating news. My good friend, a father, a mentor had passed. My good friend, Jackson Burnside. Well, for you tonight, I have reason to wear my shades. I refuse to remove them because I am crying. A giant, a great man, a great Bahamian has passed on and gone. But my brother Percy, who had mentored under him in the architect world, says, Utah, you have no reason to be sad. Jackson has passed on to you a vast amount of knowledge within the 3-hour interview you had with him before he died. Well, tonight, Bahamas, I, Utah Taylor-Rolle, will share this interview with you of a legend, a great man, a man who has contributed so much to our Bahamas. Stay tuned.